My name is Yelena. I'm 32 years old. For 15 years, I spent every Christmas alone, scrolling through Instagram photos of my entire family celebrating together at my grandmother's beach house, wondering what I did wrong to not be invited. I never got an answer. I never got an apology. I never even got a text. Then, last January, my grandmother passed away. I found out through a Facebook post. No one called me. I showed up to the funeral late because no one told me the time had changed. 3 weeks later, a lawyer contacted me with a secret my grandmother had kept from everyone, including my mother. She had left me the beach house. I didn't tell anyone. For 11 months I waited, and this Christmas Eve, when 23 relatives showed up expecting their annual vacation, they found me standing at the front door. What happened next changed everything. Before I continue, if you enjoy stories about family drama and finding your voice, please like and subscribe, but only if this story resonates with you. Where are you watching from tonight? What time is it there? Drop it in the comments. Now let me take you back to 11 months ago, to the day I got a call from a lawyer named Harold Finch. I found out my grandmother died through a Facebook post, not a phone call from my mother, not a text from my sister. A Facebook post, shared by a cousin I barely knew, with a photo of Grandma Vivian smiling in her garden and the words, "Rest in peace, Aunt Viv." I sat in my apartment in Raleigh, staring at my phone, waiting for someone, anyone, to call me. They didn't. The funeral was 3 days later. I drove 4 hours to get there. When I arrived, the service had already started. No one had told me the time changed. I sat in the back row. My mother didn't turn around. My sister Meredith glanced at me once, then looked away like I was a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong church. After the burial, I tried to approach my mother. She was surrounded by relatives, accepting condolences, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Mom," I said. She looked at me like I'd interrupted something important. "Yelena, you made it." That was it. No hug. No, "I'm glad you're here." Just, "You made it," like I'd shown up uninvited to a party. 3 weeks later, I got a phone call. "Miss Carter, this is Harold Finch. I was your grandmother's attorney." I didn't know Grandma Vivian had an attorney. "I need to meet with you privately," he said. "Don't tell anyone in your family about this call." I felt my heart stop. "Is something wrong?" "No, Ms. Carter. Something is very right." He paused. "Your grandmother left specific instructions. She said, and I quote, 'Yelena will understand why this must stay between us.'" I drove to Raleigh the next morning, with no idea that I was about to inherit the one thing my mother wanted most. But first, let me tell you about the Christmas photos. The first one appeared when I was 17, December 26th, 2009. I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw it, my entire family gathered in Grandma Vivian's living room. My mother in the center, arm around Meredith. Aunts, uncles, cousins I only saw at funerals. 23 people, laughing, holding gifts, wearing matching red sweaters. I wasn't there. I called my mother that night. "Mom, why wasn't I invited to Christmas?" She sighed like I was being dramatic. "Oh, honey, we thought you were staying with your college prep group. Didn't I tell you?" She hadn't. The next year, we assumed you were working. The year after, the group text must not have gone through. Then, "You know you're always welcome. Why didn't you just come?" I tried that once. I was 23. I drove to Outer Banks without telling anyone, thinking maybe if I just showed up, they'd have to include me. I knocked on the door. My mother opened it. Her face went pale, like she'd seen something that shouldn't exist. "Yelena? How did you—" Behind her, I heard Meredith's voice, loud and clear. "Did anyone actually invite her?" The room went quiet. 23 people stared at me like I'd crashed their private party. My mother recovered quickly. "Of course you're welcome, honey. Come in." But I saw the looks. The whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. The way Meredith made sure there was no seat for me at the dinner table. I left the next morning. I never tried again. For 15 years, I spent Christmas alone, scrolling through photos of a family that pretended I didn't exist. Until Grandma Vivian changed everything. To understand why my mother erased me, you have to understand David Carter. He was my father. He died when I was 3. I don't remember him, not really. Just fragments, the smell of turpentine, a deep voice humming jazz, the way he used to lift me onto his shoulders so I could touch the clouds. He was a painter, a dreamer, a man who believed in beauty more than bills. My mother married him when she was 19. She was young, impulsive, madly in love. Her parents disapproved, her friends warned her, but Diane followed her heart. And then reality set in. David couldn't hold a steady job. His paintings didn't sell. They lived in a one-bedroom apartment with a leaky roof and a baby who cried all night. When I was 3, David was driving home from a gallery showing, his first real chance at success. A truck ran a red light. He died on impact. The paintings that didn't sell while he was alive? They're worth 6 figures now. But my mother didn't want the money. She wanted to forget. She remarried 2 years later. Richard Mitchell. Stable, successful, safe. They had Meredith when I was 7. And slowly, carefully, my mother began erasing David Carter from existence. She never talked about him, never showed me photos. When relatives asked about her first marriage, she changed the subject. And me? I have his eyes. Blue-gray, unusual, unmistakable. Grandma Vivian was the only one who told me the truth. "Your mother doesn't hate you, Yelena," she said once, when I was crying on her porch after another Christmas alone. "She hates what you remind her of." I didn't understand then. But the day I walked into Harold Finch's office, I finally did. Harold Finch's office was in a brick building downtown, the kind of place that smelled like old books and important decisions. He was older than I expected, silver-haired, kind-eyed, with a handshake that felt like a promise. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Carter." He gestured to a leather chair. "Please, sit." I sat. My hands were shaking. He slid an envelope across his desk. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this first, before we discuss the legal matters." The envelope was cream-colored, my name written in Grandma Vivian's shaky cursive. I opened it carefully, like it might break. Inside was a single page, handwritten. "My dearest Yelena, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But before I left, I needed to make something right. You are the only one who never asked me for anything. You visited every Sunday, not for my money, not for the house, but for me. You called just to hear my voice. You sat with me when I was sick, when I was scared, when I was lonely. Your mother and sister came when they wanted something. You came because you loved me. So I'm leaving you everything. They will say I was confused. They will say you manipulated me. But I have never been clearer about anything in my life. The beach house is yours. All of it. Do with it what you will. Just promise me one thing. Stop being invisible. With all my love, Grandma." I looked up at Harold. My eyes were wet. "The beach house," I whispered. "She left me the beach house?" Harold nodded. "The deed, the property, everything. She prepared this 5 years ago and updated it twice, specifically to protect against contestation." He leaned forward. "Ms. Carter, your grandmother anticipated resistance. This will is ironclad." I sat in that leather chair for a long time, holding Grandma's letter like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the earth. The beach house. The place where my family gathered every Christmas without me. The place where they took photos in matching sweaters and pretended I didn't exist. The place worth $2.3 million that my mother had been eyeing for decades. And Grandma Vivian had left it to me. Harold cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, I need to ask, do you want me to notify your family about the will?" I looked at him. 15 years. 15 Christmases. 15 times I'd found out I was excluded through a screen, sitting alone in my apartment, wondering what I'd done wrong. And now, for the first time in my life, I had something they wanted. "No," I said. "Not yet." Harold nodded slowly. He didn't seem surprised. "Your grandmother predicted you'd say that." "She did?" He reached into his desk and pulled out another envelope, smaller, sealed with wax. "She left me instructions. She said, 'When Yelena tells you she wants to wait, give her this.'" I opened it. Inside was a single line, in Grandma's handwriting. "I knew you'd need time. Take all the time you need. But when you're ready, show them who you are." I folded the note and put it in my pocket. "Mr. Finch," I said, "how long does it take to transfer the deed?" "With your cooperation, about 3 weeks." "And if I want to keep it private?" He smiled, just a little. "I've been doing this for 40 years, Ms. Carter. I know how to be discreet." I stood up. "Then let's begin." 11 months. That's how long I waited. And in that time, I learned what my grandmother already knew. Patience isn't weakness. It's strategy. The next 11 months felt like living 2 lives. In one life, I was Yelena Carter, senior accountant at a private firm in Raleigh. I filed reports, I attended meetings, I ate lunch alone at my desk. In the other life, I was quietly becoming the owner of a $2.3 million beach house that my family didn't know belonged to me. February. I signed the final paperwork. Harold handed me a set of keys and a folder thick with documents. "It's done," he said. "The property is legally yours." April. Easter came and went. No invitation. I didn't expect one. July. Meredith's birthday. I opened Instagram and saw 47 photos from the beach house. My mother raising a champagne glass. My sister blowing out candles on the deck. My cousin's kids running through the living room I now owned. I saved every photo. Documentation, Harold had called it. Evidence of use without permission. September. I was checking my email when I found a forwarded message from Aunt Patty, my grandmother's younger sister. It was from a family group chat I'd never been added to. Diane had written, "Mom's beach house needs maintenance. I'm scheduling a contractor for next month. I'll handle the bill." She was scheduling repairs on my house, spending money on my property, without asking, without knowing. I called Harold. "What do I do?" "Let her," he said. "Keep the receipts. She's improving your asset for free." The contractor came in October. New roof shingles, fresh paint on the deck, upgraded kitchen appliances. My mother paid $12,000 to renovate a house that wasn't hers. I kept every invoice. November. I started planning. December 23rd. I boarded a flight to North Carolina with a folder full of documents and 15 years of silence packed into a single word. Enough. 1 week before Christmas, I made a phone call to the Dare County Sheriff's Office. "I'd like to report a potential trespassing situation," I said. "I own a property in Outer Banks. I have reason to believe multiple individuals will attempt to enter without permission on December 24th. The deputy on the line, Marcus Webb, according to his introduction, was patient and professional. "Ma'am, can you prove ownership?" "I have the deed, the title, tax records, and the previous owner's will, all notarized." A pause. "That's thorough." "I've had 11 months to prepare." We arranged to meet on Christmas Eve morning. He would verify my documents. If everything checked out, he'd be there when my family arrived. "Ma'am," Deputy Webb said before hanging up, "are you sure about this? Family situations can get complicated." "Deputy, my family has been using my property for 15 years without my knowledge or consent. I'd say it's already complicated." The night before I flew out, my phone buzzed. "Aunt Patty." "Yelena, it's Patty. I just wanted to check on you." I almost dropped the phone. Aunt Patty was the only relative who ever asked about me, the only one who occasionally pushed back when my mother controlled the narrative. "I'm okay, Aunt Patty." Are you sure, honey? I always wonder why you're never at these things. Diane says you prefer to be alone, but… She trailed off. Aunt Patty, I said carefully. You'll understand soon. What do you mean? Just, don't be surprised. Whatever happens tomorrow. She was quiet for a moment. Yelena, what are you planning? I smiled. My first real smile in months. Just showing up. For once. I hung up, packed my bag, and went to sleep. Tomorrow, I would stop being invisible. The beach house was exactly as I remembered it. I arrived on the evening of December 23rd, just as the sun was setting over the Outer Banks. The key Harold had given me fit perfectly in the new lock I'd had installed 2 months ago. My mother's old key wouldn't work anymore. I stepped inside and stood in the entryway, breathing in the smell of salt air and old wood. The last time I'd been here, I was 23, uninvited, unwanted. I'd left before breakfast. Now I was back. And this time, I owned every square inch. I walked through the house slowly, room by room. The living room with its stone fireplace. The kitchen my mother had just renovated. With my money, technically. The bedrooms upstairs, each one holding memories of Christmases I'd only seen in photographs. On the mantel, I found what I was looking for, a framed photo from 3 years ago. 23 people in matching red sweaters, smiling at the camera. Grandma Vivian sat in the center, looking tired but happy. I wasn't in the picture. I never was. I picked up the frame and studied it. My mother stood at Grandma's right shoulder, hand possessively on her arm. Meredith was on the left, holding her daughter. Aunts, uncles, cousins filled every available space. No room for me. There never had been. I set the photo down on the coffee table. Tomorrow, they'd see it. They'd remember where they were standing when their world shifted. In Grandma's old bedroom, I found a smaller frame, one I'd never seen before. It was me and Grandma, taken 6 months before she died. We were sitting on this very porch, laughing at something I couldn't remember. She'd kept it by her bed, hidden from the others. I placed it on the mantelpiece right in the center. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be invisible anymore. Christmas Eve morning. 7 a.m. I woke up in Grandma's bed, my bed now, to the sound of waves crashing outside the window. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. Today was the day. I showered, dried my hair, and stood in front of the closet I'd brought from Raleigh. I'd packed light, documents, toiletries, and one outfit I'd chosen specifically for this moment. A deep burgundy cashmere sweater, Grandma's color. She always said red was for people who refused to disappear. I put it on, applied light makeup, classic red lipstick, the same shade she used to wear. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the woman who'd been erased for 15 years. I saw someone else, someone ready. At 8:30, my phone rang. Ms. Carter? Deputy Webb, I'm on my way. Thank you, Deputy. I'll have everything ready. I spread my documents across the dining room table. The will, the deed, tax records showing I'd paid property taxes for the past 11 months, the contractor invoices my mother had unknowingly generated, Harold's letter confirming the legal transfer, 23 copies of an eviction notice, one for each adult family member. Deputy Webb arrived at 10. He was a tall man, mid-40s, with the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen everything. He reviewed each document carefully. This all looks legitimate, ma'am. He looked up. You really own this place. I really do. And your family doesn't know? They will in about 2 hours. He nodded slowly. I'll be here when they arrive. But ma'am, are you sure about this? Once this happens, there's no going back. I thought about 15 Christmases, 15 years of being forgotten. I've never been more sure of anything. He handed back my documents. Then let's wait. At 11:47 a.m., I saw the first car turn onto the gravel road. I was standing at the upstairs window, watching. Deputy Webb waited in his patrol car, parked discreetly behind a cluster of trees at the edge of the property. My mother's silver SUV led the procession. Behind her came Meredith's white Range Rover, then Richard's black BMW, then car after car after car. Aunts, uncles, cousins, their spouses, their children. 6 vehicles in total, 23 people, plus luggage, Christmas decorations, and enough food to feed an army. They poured out of their cars like they owned the place, because they thought they did. I watched my mother stride toward the front door, keys jangling in her hand. She was wearing a cream-colored coat and pearls, always pearls. Her posture radiated ownership, authority, control. Meredith followed close behind, directing her husband to unload the suitcases. Put the big ones in the master bedroom. Mom and Dad always take that room. My room now, my master bedroom. The children ran ahead, shouting about the beach, about presents, about all the things they'd do this week in Grandma Vivian's house. Not Grandma Vivian's house anymore. Behind them all, almost unnoticed, Deputy Webb's patrol car pulled slowly out of its hiding spot and rolled toward the driveway. No one noticed. They were too busy unloading, chattering, claiming their spaces. I walked downstairs slowly. Each step creaked on the old wooden stairs, the same stairs I'd crept down 9 years ago, trying to be invisible, trying to belong. I wasn't trying anymore. I reached the front door just as my mother inserted her key into the lock. I heard it click, and then I heard her confusion. What the? Richard, the key isn't working. I smiled and opened the door. The look on my mother's face when the door swung open will stay with me forever. She was standing there, key still in hand, mouth half open to complain to Richard about the lock. And then she saw me. For 3 full seconds, no one spoke. I stood in the doorway wearing Grandma's color, my hand resting casually on the doorframe. Behind me, the fire I'd lit that morning crackled warmly. The house smelled like cinnamon and cedar. Christmas smells. Yelena? My mother's voice cracked. What are you? How did you get in here? Good morning, Mom. I didn't move from the doorway. Richard appeared behind her, frowning. The locks must be broken. Let me try. The locks aren't broken, I said calmly. They're new. I changed them. Silence. Meredith pushed forward, her face twisted in confusion. You changed the locks? On Mom's house? It's not Mom's house. My mother laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. Yelena, what are you talking about? This is my mother's property. I don't know what kind of… It's my property, I said. It has been for 11 months. More silence. Behind the family, I saw Deputy Webb step out of his patrol car. He waited by the vehicle, watching. Aunt Patty was the first to notice him. Diane, why is there a police officer here? Everyone turned. 23 people stared at the patrol car like it had materialized from nowhere. I asked him to come, I said, in case anyone had trouble understanding the situation. My mother's face went from confused to furious. What situation? What are you talking about? I think we should discuss this outside, I said, considering this is my home and none of you have been invited in. I stepped back and began to close the door. Wait! My mother lurched forward. You can't do this! Actually, I said, I can. I opened the door wider, not to invite them in, but so everyone could see me clearly. The December wind cut across the porch, sharp and cold. My family stood clustered on the steps like carolers who'd forgotten their song. Children huddled behind their parents. Suitcases sat abandoned on the gravel. This is ridiculous, my mother snapped. Richard, call the police. The police are already here, ma'am, Deputy Webb said, walking up the path. His voice was calm, professional. I'm Deputy Marcus Webb. I've been asked to assist Ms. Carter with a property dispute. There is no dispute, my mother's voice rose. This is my mother's house. With respect, ma'am, it's not. Deputy Webb stopped beside me. I've reviewed the deed, the will, and the property records. This house belongs to Yelena Carter, has for almost a year. I watched the information ripple through the crowd. Aunts exchanged glances. Uncles shifted uncomfortably. Meredith grabbed her husband's arm like she needed something to hold on to. That's impossible, Meredith said. Grandma would never. She did. I pulled a folder from behind the door, the folder I'd prepared 11 months ago. This is a copy of her will, signed, witnessed, notarized. She left the beach house to me, specifically and exclusively. My mother snatched the folder from my hands. Her eyes scanned the pages, her face growing paler with each line. This can't be real. She was confused. She had dementia. Her doctor will testify she was cognitively sound until 2 weeks before she passed. I kept my voice level. She knew exactly what she was doing. Aunt Patty stepped forward, her hand over her heart. Yelena, Vivian left it to you? I looked at her, the only person in this crowd who had ever asked why I wasn't at Christmas. Yes, Aunt Patty, she did. The silence that followed was deafening. Deputy Webb stepped forward, and the crowd parted for him like he was Moses at the Red Sea. Folks, I understand this is unexpected. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd delivered bad news 1,000 times. But the law is clear. Ms. Carter is the legal owner of this property. I've verified the documents myself. Richard cleared his throat. Officer, surely there's been some mistake. The family has been using this property for 15 years, I finished, without my permission, because I didn't know I owned it until 11 months ago. You didn't know? Meredith's voice dripped with skepticism. How convenient. Your grandmother kept it private, Deputy Webb said. That was her choice, and now it's Ms. Carter's choice how to proceed. My mother still clutched the folder, her knuckles white. I'm calling a lawyer. This will is fraudulent. My mother would never. Your mother did. I met her eyes. She also anticipated you'd say exactly that, which is why she had Harold Finch, an estate attorney with 40 years of experience, draft it with extra protections against contestation. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a thick stack of papers, each one bearing an official seal. These are eviction notices, one for each adult present. I began handing them out. You have 30 minutes to remove any personal belongings from your vehicles. After that, if you're still on my property, Deputy Webb will escort you off for trespassing. The notices passed from hand to hand. Some people read them. Others just stared. My cousin Derek spoke up from the back. Yelena, come on. It's Christmas Eve. Can't we talk about this? We could have talked any of the 15 Christmases you spent here without inviting me. I shrugged. I have time now. Do you? No one answered. My mother exploded. You manipulated her! She threw the folder to the ground, papers scattering across the porch. You poisoned her against us. You scheming, ungrateful. When was the last time you visited her, Mom? She stopped mid-sentence. I visited her every Sunday for 5 years, I continued. I sat with her when she was scared. I held her hand when she was dying. When was the last time you came? And I don't mean for Christmas when you wanted the house. I mean just to see her. My mother's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Meredith tried to rescue her. That doesn't give you the right to steal our inheritance. Your inheritance? I laughed, a sound I didn't recognize. You mean the house you've been using for free for 15 years? The house you scheduled repairs on without asking who owned it? I turned to the crowd. My mother paid $12,000 in October to renovate this kitchen. She didn't ask me. She didn't even know she should, because she assumed she owned something that was never hers. Aunt Patty's voice cut through the tension. Diane, when was the last time you invited Yelena to Christmas? The question hung in the air like smoke. My mother whirled toward her sister. That's not... She never wanted to come. She likes being alone. I didn't want to come? I kept my voice steady. Or I was never told when the gathering was. Silence. 23 people, and not one of them could meet my eyes. Then my mother said the words that changed everything. Fine. You want to know why you're never invited? Because I can't look at you. Every time I see your face, I see him. Your father, that useless, dreaming artist who ruined my life. The crowd went completely still. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. Some of you might be thinking, she should have just talked to them. And maybe you're right. Maybe I should have. But here's my question for you. If someone ignores you for 15 years, do you owe them a conversation? Type yes if you think I should have talked first. Type no if you think actions speak louder. I'm reading every comment after this. The silence after my mother's outburst was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. 23 people stood frozen in the December cold, their breath forming small clouds that dissipated into nothing. Even the children had gone quiet, sensing something terrible had shifted. Meredith's voice came out strangled. "Mom, what are you talking about?" My mother's face had gone white. She looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else, like they'd betrayed her. "I didn't mean," she started. "That's not what I—" "David Carter," I said quietly. "My father, the man you married before Richard, the man you've been trying to erase for 30 years. Richard stepped forward, his face a mask of confusion. "Diane? What is she talking about?" My mother couldn't look at him. Aunt Patty spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Diane, you excluded your own daughter because of David? You don't understand." My mother's voice cracked. "Every time I look at her, I see him, his eyes, his expressions. I see all the mistakes I made, all the years I wasted." "She was a child," Aunt Patty's voice sharpened. "She didn't choose her father. She didn't choose his eyes." "I know that," my mother shouted. Then quieter. "I know that." I looked at my mother, really looked at her. The woman who had systematically removed me from family gatherings for 15 years. Who had gaslit me into thinking I was imagining the exclusion. Who had taught my sister that I was disposable. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger. Pity. "You couldn't forgive a dead man," I said softly. "So you punished the only part of him that was still alive." My mother's face crumpled. For a moment I thought she might cry. But she didn't apologize. She never did. I could have destroyed her. Right there, in front of everyone, I could have listed every Christmas she'd excluded me. Every lie she'd told. Every time she'd made me feel like a ghost in my own family. I could have made her small the way she'd made me small for 15 years. But that wasn't why I was here. "Deputy Webb," I said, turning away from my mother, "please give them 30 minutes to remove any personal belongings from their vehicles. Then I want everyone off my property." "Now wait just a minute," Richard started. "30 minutes, Richard. That's more consideration than I've ever gotten." Meredith clutched her daughter against her leg. "Yelena, the children, it's Christmas Eve. You can't just throw us out with nowhere to go." "There are 3 hotels in town." I kept my voice level. "I called ahead yesterday. They have rooms available. I've already made the recommendation to hold blocks for a large family." Meredith's mouth fell open. "I'm not trying to ruin anyone's Christmas," I continued. "I'm not trying to make anyone suffer. I just want what should have been mine all along, the right to decide who enters my home." Deputy Webb stepped forward. "You heard her, folks. 30 minutes. I'll be timing." One by one, the family began to move, slowly, reluctantly. Suitcases were lifted back into trunks. Children were ushered into cars, doors slammed shut with the hollow sound of defeat. My mother stood motionless on the porch, staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Yelena," she whispered, "please." I met her eyes, the same blue-gray eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. "You had 15 years to say please," I said. "You chose silence instead." I stepped back into my house and closed the door. I leaned against the closed door, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. Through the window, I watched the cars begin to pull away, one by one. The gravel crunching under tires was the only sound. Then I heard a knock. I tensed. If it was my mother again. "Yelena, it's Patty." I opened the door. Aunt Patty stood alone on the porch. The other cars were already disappearing down the road. She hadn't left with them. "May I?" she asked softly. I stepped aside. She walked in, her eyes sweeping the familiar room with new understanding. I should have spoken up years ago. Her voice was thick. I asked Diane why you never came. Every year I asked. She always had an excuse. Yelena likes her space. Yelena has work. Yelena prefers to be alone. And you believed her? I believed her. Patty wiped her eyes. That's on me. I should have called you directly. I should have demanded answers. Why didn't you? She was quiet for a long moment. Because it was easier not to. Because Diane is… She searched for the word. Convincing. And I didn't want to cause conflict. So you chose peace over me. Yes. No excuses. No justification. Just the truth. Patty reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Vivian gave me this. 2 months before she passed. She made me promise not to show anyone until after she was gone. I took the paper, unfolded it. It was a note in Grandma's handwriting. Patty, make sure Yelena knows she wasn't imagining things. It was real. Everything she felt was real. My hands trembled. She knew, Patty said. She saw everything. And she wanted you to know you were never crazy. For the first time that day, I let myself cry. From the window, I watched the last of the cars disappear down the gravel road. Meredith's white Range Rover was the final one to leave. Through the back window, I could see her daughter's face pressed against the glass, confused, watching the beach house shrink into the distance. I wondered what they'd tell her. Probably that Aunt Yelena was crazy, that she'd stolen the house, that she was a villain in their family story. It didn't matter anymore. Richard's BMW had paused before pulling out. He'd lowered his window and looked at me standing in the doorway. Yelena. His voice was tired. I'm sorry. For everything. I studied the man who'd been my stepfather for 27 years, who'd watched my mother erase me and never said a word. That's a start, Richard. But sorry doesn't undo 15 years. He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected that answer. I should have done more. Yes, you should have. He rolled up his window and drove away. My mother never looked back. She sat rigid in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, as Richard's car made the turn onto the main road. Deputy Webb walked up to stand beside me. That took courage, ma'am. Did it? I shook my head. It took 11 months of planning and a folder full of legal documents. That's not courage, that's preparation. He smiled slightly. Sometimes they're the same thing. He shook my hand. If you need anything else, you have my number. Thank you, Deputy, for being here. Just doing my job. He tipped his hat and walked back to his patrol car. I stood alone on the porch of my grandmother's house, my house, and listened to the sound of the waves. 6 SUVs, 23 relatives, 15 years of being forgotten. All of it, finally, over. Aunt Patty stayed for an hour. We didn't talk much. She made tea, using the new kettle my mother had unwittingly purchased, and we sat together in front of the fireplace, watching the flames. Call me later? She said when she finally stood to leave. I nodded. I will. She hugged me, a real hug, not the performative kind I'd gotten used to at the rare family events I'd attended. Then she left, and I was alone, truly alone, for the first time since I'd arrived. I walked through the house slowly. Every room felt different now, not haunted by exclusion, but quiet with possibility. Mine to fill or leave empty, as I chose. In the living room, the photo from 3 years ago still sat on the coffee table. 23 faces in matching red sweaters, Grandma Vivian in the center. I picked it up and studied it one more time. Then I placed it face down in a drawer. On the mantelpiece, my photo with Grandma remained. The two of us laughing on the porch, the only image in this house that included me. I did it, I said out loud, to the empty room. To her. I finally showed up. The fire crackled. The waves crashed outside. The house settled around me like it was exhaling. I sat down in Grandma's old chair, my chair now, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The anger, the grief, the strange, hollow ache of winning a battle I never should have had to fight. I cried. Not the polite tears I'd allowed myself in Harold's office, but the ugly kind. The kind I'd been saving for 15 years. When I finished, the sun was setting over the water. I was alone. But for the first time, being alone felt like a choice. My choice. The messages started 3 days after Christmas. My phone, which had been silent for most of the holiday, suddenly exploded with notifications. Group texts I'd never been added to were now including me. Ironically, now that I'd made myself impossible to ignore. Some were angry. Cousin Derek, what you did was cruel. It's Christmas. You could have handled this differently. Aunt Barbara, my mother's sister. Vivian would be ashamed of how you treated your family. Meredith, I hope you're happy destroying our traditions. Grandma would be rolling in her grave. I didn't respond to any of them. But there were other messages too, unexpected ones. Uncle Frank, who'd always seemed like background noise at family events. Yelena, I didn't know you weren't being invited. I always thought you just didn't want to come. I'm sorry. Cousin Sarah, I asked my mom once why you were never there. She said you had your own thing going on. I should have reached out. I'm sorry. Another cousin, one I barely remembered. I just found out Diane told everyone you preferred to celebrate alone. That wasn't true, was it? No, it wasn't. I learned something in those 3 days. For 15 years, my mother had controlled the narrative. She'd told everyone I was private, independent, that I chose isolation. And they'd believed her because it was easier than questioning. Now, with the truth exposed, some of them were starting to look back. To remember the unanswered questions, the missing pieces. Not all of them, of course. Some would never believe anything except that I was the villain. But some. Aunt Patty called every day, just to check in, just to talk. It was more family contact than I'd had in years, and it was enough. For now, it was enough. Richard called on New Year's Eve. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe the screen. Yelena. His voice sounded tired, older than I remembered. Thank you for picking up. I waited. I need you to know something, he continued. About what happened. About the past 15 years. I'm listening. I didn't know the full extent. I knew Diane was complicated about you. I knew she had trouble being in the same room with you sometimes, but I didn't know she was actively excluding you. How is that possible, Richard? You were there, every Christmas. She controlled everything. His voice cracked slightly. The invitations, the planning, the guest lists. When I asked about you, she said you didn't want to come. Yelena likes her space, she said, every single time. And you never verified? Never called me yourself? A long pause. No, I didn't. Why not? Because I trusted her. Because... He exhaled. Because it was easier not to. There it was. The same reason Aunt Patty had given. The same reason everyone had. It was easier not to. Your grandmother called me once, Richard added. About a year before she passed. She asked why I let Diane erase you. Those were her exact words. What did you tell her? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. He paused. I'm not calling to ask forgiveness, Yelena. I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I see it now, what Diane did, what I allowed by doing nothing. I considered his words, the passive observer, the silent witness. 27 years of watching and never intervening. Thank you for telling me, Richard. Is there anything I can do? Not right now, but thank you for asking. It was more than my mother had ever done. My mother called 1 week later. I recognized the number immediately, the same number that had never called on birthdays, never texted on holidays, never reached out for 15 years unless she wanted something. I answered anyway. I needed to hear what she'd say. Yelena, honey. Her voice was honeyed, careful, the voice she used when she wanted something. I think we've had a terrible misunderstanding. Have we? The holidays get so stressful. People say things they don't mean. I'm sure we can work this out. Work what out exactly? The house, of course. Her tone shifted slightly, still sweet, but with an edge. It has such sentimental value for the whole family. Maybe we could arrange some kind of shared ownership. I could handle the maintenance and… No. Silence. Excuse me? No, Mom. I'm not sharing ownership. I'm not arranging maintenance schedules. This is my house. Grandma left it to me. Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly. The lawyers already reviewed it. For 11 months. The will is valid, it's over. Her voice dropped the sweetness entirely. You're being unreasonable. I'm being clear. There's a difference. I'm still your mother, Yelena. I closed my eyes. Being a mother requires more than biology, Mom. You taught me that. What is that supposed to mean? It means you spent 30 years trying to erase a dead man, and you erased me instead. And now it's done. I'm done. Yelena. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. Then I blocked her number. It was the first time in my life I'd ended a conversation with my mother on my own terms. The first time I'd stopped waiting for an apology that was never going to come. It felt like putting down something heavy I hadn't realized I was carrying. Real quick, I know some of you are wondering if I ever forgave my mother. I'll get to that. But first, tell me, do you think people like Diane can actually change? Or is it just who they are? Comment change if you believe in second chances. Comment done if you think some patterns can't be broken. No judgment either way. I genuinely want to know what you think. Now back to the story. In February, I made a decision. I talked to my company about working remotely. They agreed, partially because I was good at my job, partially because post-pandemic flexibility had become the norm. I packed up my Raleigh apartment, loaded my car, and drove back to Outer Banks. The beach house was waiting for me. I spent the first week settling in, moving furniture, painting the bedroom a soft gray blue, making the space mine instead of a museum of family memories I'd never been part of. One afternoon, while cleaning out a closet in Grandma's old office, I found a box I hadn't seen before. Inside were letters, dozens of them written to various family members but never sent. Most were mundane, thank you notes, birthday wishes, complaints about the weather. But at the bottom, I found an envelope with my name on it. For Yelena, when she's ready. Inside was a single page. My dearest granddaughter, you don't need their approval to have value. You only need the approval of yourself. They tried to make you small, but small things don't cast shadows. You were never small, Yelena. You were just waiting for your moment. I hope I'm not there to see it. Not because I don't want to be, but because I know you need to do this alone. You need to prove to yourself that you can. When it's over, remember, living well isn't revenge. It's simply the truth. I love you. I always have. Grandma Vivian. I held the letter for a long time. That weekend, Aunt Patty came to visit. We cooked dinner together, something neither of us had done with family in years. It was quiet, simple, and for the first time in my life, it felt like home. Meredith showed up unannounced in mid-March. I was on the porch reading when her white Range Rover pulled into the driveway. I watched her sit in the car for a full minute before she opened the door. She walked toward me slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal. "I'm not here to fight," she said. I set my book down. "Then why are you here?" She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. She looked different, tired, uncertain. None of the polished confidence I remembered. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the empty chair beside me. She climbed the steps and sat, her movements stiff and awkward. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I didn't know," she finally said, "about how Mom treated you." I mean, I knew she favored me. That was obvious. But I didn't know she was actively keeping you away. Would it have mattered if you knew? Meredith flinched. Then, quietly, I don't know. That's the honest answer. I studied my sister. Half-sister, technically. The golden child. The one who'd never had to fight for a place at the table. You never questioned it, I said. Why I was never there. You just accepted it. I did. She looked at her hands. I believed what I was told, that you didn't want to be around us, that you preferred being alone. Did that make sense to you? That your sister would choose to be alone every Christmas for 15 years? She didn't answer. We both knew she'd never thought about it that deeply. I'm not ready to have a relationship with you, she said finally. But I wanted you to know, I'm starting to see things differently. That's more than I expected. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me in person. She left 30 minutes later. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was something. Over the next few months, I learned something important about boundaries. They're not walls, they're doors with locks, and you decide who gets a key. With my mother, complete no contact, no calls, no texts, no explanations. I didn't owe her closure. She'd had 15 years to ask questions, and she'd chosen silence. Now I chose the same. With Richard, a single email once a month. Updates on the house, polite but distant. He'd been a passive bystander for 27 years. I wasn't going to pretend that observation was the same as love. With Meredith, the door was open, but just barely. She texted sometimes, photos of her daughter, random observations about the weather. I responded when I felt like it. No pressure, no expectations. With the rest of the family, it varied. The ones who'd reached out to apologize got responses. The ones who'd defended my mother got silence. I wasn't keeping score, but I was paying attention. And Aunt Patty got the spare key. You sure about this? She asked, holding the metal in her palm like it might explode. You're the only one who asked about me, I said. For 15 years, you were the only one who noticed I was missing. I should have done more than notice. You're doing more now, that's what matters. She visited every other weekend. We walked on the beach. We talked about Grandma Vivian. We built something new on the ashes of something broken. I didn't slam the door on my family. I just stopped holding it open for people who never planned to walk through. There's a difference between isolation and boundaries. Isolation is loneliness. Boundaries are peace. I was finally learning to tell the difference. This year, I hosted Christmas. Not for 23 people. Not for people who'd spent 15 years pretending I didn't exist. For 4. Aunt Patty arrived first, carrying a casserole dish and a bottle of wine. Vivian's recipe, she said, handing me the dish. I found it in her old cookbook. My 2 closest friends from Raleigh came next, Beth and Carmen, the women who'd been my real family when my actual family had forgotten me. They'd driven 3 hours to be here. And finally Marcus, a colleague from my firm who'd gone through a divorce last year and had nowhere else to go. When I'd invited him, he'd stared at me like I'd offered him a kidney. You barely know me, he'd said. I know what it's like to be alone on Christmas, I'd replied. Nobody should feel like that if they don't want to. So here we were. 4 people around a table meant for 12. A fire crackling, candles lit, the smell of Grandma Vivian's recipe filling the air. On the mantelpiece, I'd placed her photo, the one of us laughing together, the only picture in this house that had ever included me. Aunt Patty raised her glass. To Vivian, and to the granddaughter who reminded us what family actually means. We clinked glasses. Outside, the waves crashed against the shore. Inside, the conversation flowed easily. No walking on eggshells, no watching what I said, no feeling like an intruder in my own life. I looked around the table at the faces of people who had chosen to be here, who wanted me there. Thank you, I said quietly, for coming. Beth squeezed my hand. Thank you for inviting us, This place is beautiful. It was, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged in it. After everyone had gone to bed, I slipped out onto the porch. The December air was cold and sharp, carrying the salt smell of the ocean. Stars scattered across the sky like spilled sugar. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn sounded. I sat in Grandma's old rocking chair, my chair now, and let myself think. About the past year. About 15 years before that. About the woman I used to be and the woman I'd become. I used to think forgiveness meant pretending nothing happened. That being the bigger person meant swallowing your pain and smiling through it. I don't believe that anymore. Some things can't be forgiven. Not because you're bitter, but because forgiveness requires acknowledgement, requires remorse, requires change, and some people will never offer those things. My mother had called 3 more times since I'd blocked her. Each time from a different number. Each time with a different approach. Anger, guilt, bargaining. Never once with an apology. I didn't hate her. That surprised me. I thought I would, after everything. But hate takes energy. It takes space in your head, your heart. And I'd already given her enough of both. What I felt now was something smaller, quieter, something like pity, mixed with acceptance. She was who she was. She'd made her choices, and now I was making mine. Boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about protection, about choosing where your energy goes. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn a seat at a table that didn't want me. Now I had my own table. It was smaller, quieter, but everyone there had chosen to be there. No obligations, no resentments, no ghosts. I rocked slowly in the chair, listening to the waves. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anything. I was just here. On Christmas morning, I found it. I was cleaning up from the night before, putting dishes away, when I noticed something behind Grandma's photo on the mantelpiece. An envelope, cream-colored, tucked into the back of the frame. My name was written on the front in her handwriting. Below it, a note, to be read on your first Christmas as owner. My hands trembled as I opened it. My dearest Yelena, if you're reading this, it means you did it. You stopped being invisible. I wish I could be there to see it. I spent years watching your mother try to erase you, and it broke my heart. I should have said something. I should have fought harder. But Diane is my daughter, and I kept hoping, foolishly, that she would change. She didn't, and I'm sorry for that. I left you this house because you earned it. Not through manipulation or scheming, like they'll probably say, but through love. Pure, simple love that never asked for anything in return. You have your father's eyes, Yelena. Did I ever tell you that? David was a good man. Impractical, yes. A dreamer, certainly. But good. Your mother never could see that. She only saw what she'd lost by loving him. You inherited his eyes, and his heart, and his ability to see beauty in things other people overlook. Living well is the best revenge, they say. But living true, that's even better. Be true, Yelena. Be who you are. Don't let anyone make you small again. I love you. I'm proud of you. And wherever I am, I'm watching. Your grandma. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. Thank you, I whispered to the empty room. The fire crackled, the waves rolled, and somewhere I knew she heard me. Before I end, I want to share some thoughts on what happened. Not to excuse anyone, but to understand. My mother isn't a monster. That would be easier, honestly, if I could just label her as evil and move on. But people are more complicated than that. Here's what I've come to believe. Diane married my father at 19. She was young, idealistic, convinced that love would conquer all. When reality hit, the poverty, the instability, the death, she couldn't process the grief. So she converted it into shame. In her mind, loving David became her biggest mistake, And I became living proof of that mistake. Every time she looked at my eyes, she saw not her daughter, but her failure. That doesn't excuse what she did. Nothing excuses 15 years of systematic exclusion, gaslighting, and emotional abandonment, but it explains it. And understanding helped me let go of the question that had haunted me for decades. What did I do wrong? The answer is nothing. I did nothing wrong. I was just unlucky enough to be born with the wrong man's eyes. As for me, my weakness was patience, kindness without boundaries. I spent 15 years thinking that if I was just quiet enough, good enough, undemanding enough, they would finally see me. They never did. Because here's the truth: some people don't want to see you, and no amount of shrinking yourself will change their vision. The lesson? Don't water dead plants. Don't knock on doors that won't open. Don't beg for a seat at tables where you're not wanted. Build your own table instead. And that's what I'm doing now, one day at a time. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story touched something in you, please leave a comment. Tell me your story. Have you ever felt invisible? What did you do about it? If you enjoyed this, there's another story waiting for you in the description, about a woman who gave her family everything until she gave them nothing. Click it, and I'll see you there.